On today's PMEA's Take Note podcast, we are talking with the new president of NAfME, and I bet you know who he is if you're here in Pennsylvania. On today's PMEA's Take Note podcast. Well, we are here in Reading, Pennsylvania at the PMEA Summer Conference, and while we're here, just like we did at the annual conference, we're taking the opportunity to do some live in-person podcasts. It's great to be with like real humans, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I am joined here by a face and a voice certainly familiar to Pennsylvania music educators, and now will be a familiar face and voice to national music educators. Scott Sheehan, past president of PMEA, past district president, past advocacy rep. You've probably done one of everything.
Many.
Yes, okay. High school band director at Hollidaysburg, and now is the NAfME president. So congratulations on that.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's like a long email signature, right? When you put all that stuff in.
Yeah.
So just taken over as NAfME president. And boy, what a strange time we've all been, of course, the last few years, and I still think we're still in that kind of strange time. As you look into your presidency coming in, what are your goals?
Sure, thanks. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's,
Absolutely.
a pleasure, and I really enjoy this podcast. I think you've had some great hosts on there, so great guests.
We have a great host, too.
Yeah, you do have a great host. But I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to share with PMEA members about the goals, because as I mentioned earlier today in the session this morning, I'm not sure that everybody really understands what NAfME does. And I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect between what happens at the national level and what happens at the state level. So for me, the goal is really pretty simple. It's bringing people together. It's working to lift up the work that our states are doing in so many great ways. I mean, we know we've been through PMEA up through the ranks and see all the things. You know, yes, people know our festival system here in Pennsylvania, but there's a lot more that happens, especially on the advocacy and public policy side, which is part of what people know NAfME for. And I think that I want to amplify that work at the national level, but in the biggest context, it's really about bringing people together. Through my experiences that you were mentioning earlier, I have seen that music education is siloed. You know, we have band, choir, orchestra, general music, elementary, high school, collegiate, middle school. We see all these segments. We're very segmented and siloed. And even band, let's just, because I'm a band director, we'll just take band. You've got the CBDNA, the ABA,
right.
the NBA, all these band associations, and everybody, and pulling back out of band, but just in general, everybody means well. Everybody has a lot of the same goals, and that is music education opportunities for all children. And I think that it's important that we see the commonalities that we have as associations. Where's that common ground? Where are the places that we can work together? Who is doing the best job? Who is best suited to do this work? And recognizing that, because sometimes, I'll be very honest, sometimes it's not NAfME, or sometimes it's not an MEA. Maybe there's another association or a company. Our industry partners are part of this conversation too. That we see where we can work together, we see where the commonalities are, and we amplify the lanes where people can do the best work, and keeping each other informed along the way. So that's kind of a lofty goal,
right.
But I really do believe that to face the challenges that we're facing now as a music education profession, we really have to lock arms and be together moving forward, one group with one voice, and not just segmented, because I do believe that together we're going to be a lot stronger. Separated, we're all going to continue to get the smaller results than what we've had.
So we're going to talk about some of those challenges in a minute, but let me make a couple points, questions. I mean, coalition building is hard.
It is.
Even though you might think, well, we're all in the music space and we're, go music. There's a lot of complex issues, and as we're in a time now coming out of the pandemic where a lot of those issues bubbled up that we weren't aware of, we have new things like modern band that now plays into all of this. So that's a lot of people to bring into the space under that music ed umbrella. So that is a lofty goal.
It is, but here's the thing. I believe, in my core, I really believe that every person, and I'll expand that out to an association or a committee or a group, has a viable, vital role to play in all of this because they represent a certain segment. And for a long time in music education, I feel like we've had the big players, the people that have always been at the table, the proverbial table that we talk about. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu, that kind of thing. Right. Well, the point that you're making is the table needs to be built bigger. And we have not necessarily always made space for various groups. And I'm not going to start naming associations and things just because there's so many out there. But we can all think of the typical associations who have been part of this space, leading the way for decades. And they should be recognized for that. And I don't think that I'm trying to downplay any one or say that anybody has done anything wrong by any means. I don't want to be misinterpreted. What I think is that as we are emerging from the pandemic, that we are looking to broaden the table, make the table bigger, make more pathways into the conversations that are so critical, because it's not just NAfME members that are facing these challenges that we're seeing, and it's not just PMEA members, or it's not just whomever. It's not one segment, as I was talking about earlier. It's all of us. And I like to use the term, we're a music education nation, and I might use that again later. Yeah. But we are a music education nation, and I think that for us to see that realized in any particular way, it is about having conversations and owning our past. To your point about it's not easy to build coalitions, and there's history and all that plays a part of it. But I think we need to own it, we need to recognize it, and we need to look to the future and not look back to why things were the way they were or why we're here today. Where do we see ourselves 5 years, 10 years down the road? And as I've been, I know I've only been in this seat for just a few short weeks, I've had some pretty amazing conversations with some of our big partners, and it's not about sponsoring the next conference or some event. It's not about that. It's about the relationship that people want to see. And I think that's how we can maybe begin to see this larger table be built, by talking about strategically, what are our associations have in common? How do we move that conversation to a 3 to a 5 year plan for music education, not for NAfME's strategic plan or agenda or whatever. It's bigger than that.
Right. Just to take off on one other point you talked about, the NAfME has done this great policy work over the years, and it's now in many ways incumbent on the states to take it up because of the policy that's been created at the federal level, which is so much more, is given so much more power to the states. But I would take it a step further, that it's so important for every music teacher to then, especially in Pennsylvania, to take up that in their own school district, because we are a local control state. So yes, there's some decisions at the federal level that have been made, right? But so much is now to the states. And in Pennsylvania, so much is then down to the schools. So it is about educating yourself about these issues and being a constant advocate, but that's not a scary thing. That doesn't, I always tell people, it doesn't mean go pound your fist on somebody's desk. You're just constantly being positive about your program. And that's a great form of advocacy.
Absolutely. And you, we're so fortunate to have you at your position now with PMEA, and even before you were here, you were doing that work. You were leading that work. And I couldn't agree more. And I feel like, and I've talked with Mackie Spradley, our previous president for NAfME, about this. I feel like the word advocacy has so many different tentacles, And so are we talking about advocacy for teachers? Are we talking about advocacy for programs? Are we talking about advocacy for students? At what level? Public school, collegiates, the profession, the federal level, state level, as you were just saying, local level. And it means so many different things. And I think that, to your point about educating music teachers to understand the vastness and the breadth and depth of what advocacy is really important. And the other thing that I think you hit the nail right on the head. Teachers are busy. Teachers, some people have told me they don't see that that's their role. They don't think that being an advocate for their program is their role. They're there for the students. They're very student-centered. And I think we need to meet people where they are with that.
Absolutely.
And then go forward. But yeah, I think you're right. And we're very fortunate, like I said, to have you helping us to understand that pathway, to that advocacy work, because it can be as simple as just making sure people are aware of what's going on in the classrooms.
Right. And I'm on this quest to come up with a better word than advocacy, to your exact point, because it's too broad of a word. There's too many pieces of that puzzle that it encompasses. So, but I haven't found it yet.
Well, and real quick, sorry, but
sure, no.
And the word policy scares people too.
That's right. You're absolutely right. And policy is another one of those words where what does that mean? Does that mean a state policy? Does that mean a Department of Ed policy? Does that mean literally your school district policy on when you go to lunch? That's a policy.
Right.
So all right, I'll work on that word after I come up with the advocacy one. So teaching right now is strange. It's a tough time recovering from the pandemic, although there's lots of good signs of good things happening out there. I think a lot of the fears we had didn't come true, which is good. But there's less entering the profession, more leaving it. So what does that mean for music education? What does that mean for, how should we be reacting to that, I guess? Because those become challenges for every educator.
Well, I mean, there's no secret here. It is a challenging time. It is a very challenging time for all of us in education, not just music education. Right. And I think a couple of things to try to keep the positive spin, right? I mean, that's really what we're trying to do. I think I don't think we shy away from the challenges. I think we recognize them and we take care of ourselves. I mentioned that this morning too, that our own well-being as a human, as a teacher, as a father, as a person, we have to take care of ourselves. And so that in today's world might mean seeking help. It might mean taking a break. It might mean having that one thing that you look forward to every night, to sit back and read a book or have a glass of wine or whatever it might be that you do to take care of yourself. I think that is critical. And I think, moving forward, when we see it as a profession, it's really about making sure people understand the joy and love of music. And that has not changed. The pandemic has not taken away what music does for humanity, what music does for our souls. And that's critical, because that has forever been part of every culture, every civilization across the dawn of time. Music is there. Music has been part of who we are. It's in our DNA, I believe. And I think that it's reminding ourselves individually, reminding our profession that joy and that desire of that creative outlet that music provides, that form of expression that music provides, it's all still there. And I think we have to tap into that. And that seems so like, oh, that's, makes you feel good, fluffy level stuff. But it's true. I'll use a different analogy. So if you wake up every morning to an alarm clock and you're like, oh, I got to get up, I got to do this, I got to do that. But if you wake up every morning to an opportunity clock, which my friend Matthew O'Rell has, coined, and it's your outlet, it's your outlook, it's how you think about it. So if you, instead of I have to do this, I get to do this, and you get the power of get is pretty powerful. When you start to think about what you get to do every day instead of what you have to do every day. And so I think it's our outlook. And so I think that as we think about going into the classroom and seeing students and finding that and sharing that love of music and empowering them to share their love of music back, it's symbiotic. Right. The more you give, the more you get. And that's true. Those kind of, I don't know, I'll call them laws of nature, those truths aren't going to change, even though our challenges are great, even though there's a lot there. So, am I an optimist? Am I, yeah, but I also try to make sure I take care of myself first. I try to make sure that I'm supporting colleagues everywhere I can. whether that's in my own school, whether that's across the state, or now the opportunity to support colleagues across the nation. I think that we're in this together. As I said earlier, the only way we're going to face these challenges is to lock arm in arm, and our profession is strong. And I think there's been a the poison
Agreed.
gets out there.
Yes.
Somebody taints the water, and now everybody's believing that music education isn't a good profession, or it is. That's just not true. There are still millions of students across this country who are in schools making music, have that deep, rich desire to have music part of their lives, and to share in music making, and that's not gone away.
Right. So to your point about mindfulness, I'll refer folks back to 2 podcasts ago when we talked to Courtney Coffey, who is in the color guard world, but she talks a lot about mindfulness in the marching arts, and really so much what she talked about can go to anything. But the thing that I took away from that is exactly the point you made. It's about that outlook. So I would suggest folks go listen to that one too. Let's move on to talk about college students. Mm-hmm. So college students entering the profession now face a whole different set of issues than previous generations. I'm talking 10 years ago, what they're facing. From everything from cost to there is so much coming at them that they feel that they have to be prepared for, because what are they, it might have been years ago, okay, band, choir, orchestra is what I might do. Right. Well, now there's just so many other with modern band, which is wonderful, but now these students need to be prepared in some ways, because what if they're put into a teaching situation? So what's your advice to college students to keep them energized and to continue to be excited for careers in music education?
Well, first of all, what was the spark? What was the spark that made them fall in love with music in the first place? Was it the excitement from a teacher? Because often we hear those stories, right? It was the music teacher that inspired them because they saw the love that music teacher had for teaching and for them as students and for music. And so I always tell people, when you're feeling down, burned out, whatever it may be, or feeling overwhelmed, what was the spark that got you into this in the first place? And I remember my spark. I remember exactly the day it happened, and I won't get into the whole story right now, but I can remember that day and the excitement and the joy and the love that I felt from music. And I often joke around, music chose me. I didn't necessarily choose music. I was on a path to be an architect, and and life took me a different spin, and it was literally one day, one instance, playing trumpet in the high school band that changed the whole thing for me. And some people might think it's a God thing, or a divine intervention or whatever, but remember the spark. And so that's first. I think the other thing is realize that it's okay not to be okay. And I don't live too far from Penn State University, and their student body of music ed majors went to the professors as a group and said, we're not okay. This is different. We don't feel, the anxiety, mental, fatigue, all these sorts of things that were coming up. And the professors said, thank you. Now we can help you. Rather than failing you, rather than making you, let's talk. Let's meet people where they are. And so my advice to the college students is, don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Recognize if you don't feel okay, whether that's mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, ask for help. Go out there and see. Because yes, there are many, many challenges now in there. Now, when you're talking about curriculum and looking at the vastness of what's expected now in a school of music for music education, it's large. But to me, it's exciting. It's super exciting because there's new things to learn. And I believe, in my heart, I truly believe this, that the generation coming out now is far more equipped than our generation to deal with the problems that we're facing now. They've grown up with the technology. They've grown up with this critical thinking and thinking on the fly, because it's that, we used to say, oh, it's instant gratification, and that's a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing when they can apply that to problem solving. And so I think that I really believe, and I've read some articles about this, that today's generation of young people are going to help solve the problems and are better equipped to solve the problems than we are, because we think of the boxes that we have built and have grown up in and lived in. And so, I think college students have so much to offer. I see them, obviously we say they're the future of our profession, but what an exciting time to be involved in the change. Our generation gets scared of change.
Right.
Wait, this is different. Why is it this? What's happening? Whereas that's all they've known, especially in the past 2 or 3 years. One thing changes, and so the adaptability, flexibility, resilience, those skills that these young people are building because they had to, because they didn't have another choice, is huge. And if they are not bouncing back, that's when I go back and just say, ask for help.
Right. So last topic area, let's take a 30,000 foot level. So music is part of school. That's what it's not an extra, it's not an add-on. Music is part of school.
Yeah.
I can sit here and say that, but that's not obviously the reality everywhere. And I heard this great way to put it, kind of maybe what our goal should be everywhere is, it's the 3 A's of school: academics, athletics, and the arts. Mm-hmm. Those are all incredibly important things about school.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at state dialogue, local dialogue, national dialogue. It's in many ways still defined as an extra. How do we change that? How do we change the conversation that it's just part of what you do when you go to school?
So it's funny you asked this, and when my response to this, some people might say, Scott, you're crazy, but I'm gonna tell you what I think. So it goes back to my goal of working together, right? That this is bigger than any one of us. This is bigger than NAfME, than our MEA, any one state or any one association or organization or company. We have got to come together and tackle this. And quite frankly, I have a marketing background too. And I think that some of this is the marketing, because research shows the good that music has for brains, right? To be engaged in music engages the brain in a higher functioning way. We have plenty of anecdotal evidence of all of the extrinsic benefits that music has, that maybe you can get through athletics or maybe you can get in other places, but it's still enhanced, it's still amplified through music. So there's a lot of evidence out there about why music should be essential and part of every school everywhere across the country. What I believe is that we have kind of missed the marketing aspect of it. So I'm going to equate this to STEM.
Okay.
So, I don't know, 15 years ago, let's just say, I don't know an exact date, this STEM movement comes in. And the science, technology, engineering, and math people in public schools got this huge boost to their programs, both financially, in some ways staffing, and so on. Now, science, technology, engineering, and math have been in schools forever. Before we called it STEM, those classes, those subjects, that innovation that was happening in schools was there. But what happened was, folks went out and they found funding, and they created a need because industry said so. There was studies done. They said, well, this is the skills and the thinking that we need to have in our future careers. And so thus gave the birth to STEM with a whole lot of funding. Well, we have a lot of the same information about music and the arts. We have a ton of information out there to say why the music and the arts are going to contribute to a more creative society, to a more critically thinking society, and so on. And so in some ways, I feel like it's a marketing kind of thing, that we need to make sure that our next door neighbors who have no children in schools, who aren't at the concerts, hear these messages. Because what I believe is that we advocate, back to that word, advocacy. Our advocacy messages don't have the penetration we think they have.
Right.
We
Absolutely.
stand up at a concert. We stand up at a conference. Who's at that concert? The parents who already have kids in the program. Who's at a conference? The music teachers who already have jobs in the profession or are college students. So to me, we're missing the boat on the messaging getting in a broader and a much more penetration beyond the the people within the music education nation that I talk about, that we already know. We already know.
Exactly.
And so we've got to get this message out. And what that's going to take is considerable coordination and funding for some sort of national campaign. And I'll be honest, I am starting to lay the groundwork a little bit to build this idea. And it's not my idea, and it doesn't have to be NAfME's idea. Because again, I believe that this work and these challenges are bigger than any one of us. And to me, there's room at the table for everybody that wants to be part of this change. But going back to what I was saying about STEM, my next door neighbor probably can recognize that acronym. Whereas and STEAM, I know some people are big on STEAM. I don't know. It doesn't quite have the same traction. But the research is there. The benefits of a music education are there. And I believe that the industry sees it as important of what we provide. It's just a matter of us getting it out there the right way.
Yeah, so I look forward to seeing how that goes because it is interesting as we work with partners both in and outside of the music space or foundations that they're with what you're saying, that they see the value in it, but it is going to take some significant groundswell of money.
Oh yeah.
But then what's the right message? Because I think that there have been there's been some toes in the water on that.
Right.
But maybe the message wasn't right, and also maybe it's just there wasn't enough money. So I give you credit for going down this road. Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. And some people I think too, like who's already at the table. There's this social capital. I'll say it this way. There's social capital that needs to already be invested to have credibility, right? And so that's part of this, to really make a movement, or to make an idea become a movement, to really become some sort of national campaign. It does take, the social capital, but at the same time, I truly believe that there are many voices that haven't been at the table that are critical to be part of the conversation.
Right. Well, Scott, thanks for taking some time to talk to us. You are going to be very busy for the next 2 years based on what I've heard here in the last few minutes. And but thank you for your leadership, not only in Pennsylvania, but now taking on this role and coming to the table with so many ideas. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you.
So
thank you, Mark.
Thanks for joining us. And thank you all for joining us on PMEA's Take Note podcast. We will see you next time.